Adam,
Yeah?
is this an ad?
This is an ad for Mutinex. Mutinex are a marketing mix modelling company.
Why do I need one of those?
Well, then you can model the return on every single marketing decision you do.
So you wouldn't do an ad like this?
You would never have to do an ad like this ever again.
Mutinex Growth OS, your best decisions start here. For more information or to request a demo, visit mutinex.co. That's MUTINEX.co.
I mean, it is deeply collaborative at the beginning. You know, we sometimes get poked fun at because we enforce dark periods in the middle of research projects where the researcher, they're just supposed to be immersed in the world of people and they're not going to reply to emails or share early insights or any of that stuff that ends up ruining research.
Welcome back to Black T-Shirts. G'day, Adam.
Hi, Brent. How are you?
I'm good. Would you say we've been fans and supporters of research on this podcast?
Not at all. Not at all. We like an insight.
Yes.
But we're not huge on research, qualitative or quantitative, except for ideally who do sponsor our show. So
we're big fans of what they do, of course. Why is that, do you think?
I wonder whether research is worth it. So insights are important, but do you need to trundle out onto the street, go and observe people, go look at them, hang out with them, go watch them brush their teeth and all of that kind of stuff? Do you need to do all of that to get an insight and feed it back into the organisation?
Are you suggesting that AI will be able to do all that for us?
Yeah, synthetic research is a lot faster.
Research.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, interesting you pose that question because we've got someone who has a business which is all about spending deep time with real people.
Oh, my God, how embarrassing. Oh, I hope I haven't embarrassed our next guest.
And that person is Gunny Scarfo, who's the founder of Nonfiction. And we'll find out a bit more about Nonfiction in a minute. But hello, Gunny. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. It's already awkward. Way to go. Now, how will we ever recover from this beginning?
Gunny, are you wearing a black T-shirt, Gunny?
I'm not currently, but I was earlier today. I was wearing a black T-shirt that said, it was a souvenir I got from the Armored MMA organization here in Nashville, Tennessee, that I go to watch about once a month. And I've been obsessed with hand-to-hand combat since I was a kid. I've bought every UFC since the first one, 1993, I think it was. And so I wanted to give back. And so I bought a bunch of merch from this organization. And I don't know if Alex Bogusky and David Droga were wearing Armored MMA T-shirts on their appearances, but
no, they weren't. Alex was wearing a white T-shirt because he radiates energy. He doesn't suck. Energy. He doesn't soak up energy. He radiates energy. He only wears white.
But Gunny, I've got news for you. I can see you, and you are wearing a black T-shirt.
It looks black, Gunny. What color is that T-shirt?
I'd say dark gray, but let's go over hues, gentlemen.
Is it faded black?
Hey, Gunny, we'll start with your name. I asked ChatGPT about the name Gunny, and I said, where's it from? And this is the response. The name Gunny is uncommon and could have two potential meanings. Number one, military slang. In the US, Marine Corps Gunny is the slang term for a gunnery sergeant. Or two, Gunny could also be a nickname derived from a name such as Gunter.
Shall we call Gunny Gunter for the rest of the show?
Well, my uncle is Gunter, but Gunny, which one is it? Or is there a third option?
Do you commonly employ ChatGPT in the etymology of
names? Yes, that's how I get by.
No, actually, all jokes aside, it did pretty well. The first is the origin. So my father was born in 1926 and lied about his age to join the Marine Corps in 1943 or 44, so he could go fight in the Pacific Front. He fought in the Battle of Okinawa as a Marine, which is a particularly gruesome one if you are a history buff. And he fought alongside a gunny sergeant who meant a lot to him and who was killed in action in Okinawa. And so 3 decades later, when he had a son, he named that son after the gunny sergeant that he fought alongside.
That's incredible. That's a beautiful story. But I wonder how often that has happened for ChatGPT to know that. Is that based off of one gunny?
No, I mean, a gunny sergeant is a rank. And so basically
Right.
no one in the United States, even among military people, uses the word gunny except for Marines. And so I grew up around Marines, and for them, anyone who served as a gunny sergeant can get called that.
Right, and they must get excited when they hear your name.
Yeah, and then it leads to the question, were you a Marine? At which point, bashful, shameful continuation of the conversation isn't quite as good.
Were you tempted to be a Marine at any stage?
Marines hate hearing about people who were tempted to serve, wanted to serve but didn't or couldn't. And so, I mean, I would say like I grew up with fantasies of that, but the reality is you either do that and you make that sacrifice or you don't.
Was your father keen for you to do it or not do it? What was his guidance?
He was keen for me to not do it. This also is probably unpopular, but he felt that he did it so that I wouldn't have to do it. He didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of families like hand a military tradition down, which is I'm deeply grateful for. But my dad was never like that. He wanted me to go do something other than lay in the mud and sit in foxholes and the like.
I think it's really interesting about American culture and how the thank you for your service kind of respect is just permeates through everything. Like you can serve in the military in Australia and be shunned for doing that, like be shunned at best or derided at worst. Whereas in America, and I don't know if it's a recent thing, that there's just this amazing amount of respect everywhere for people who serve, and lots of rituals around it as well. Is that a relatively new thing?
No, I think that America was a country that was the Constitution was written in ink, but made real via blood. And I think that's something that, especially from the 1960s onward, from Vietnam onward, there has been a deeply critical look at the way America uses military force. And I think that's probably at its height now, for better and for worse. But there is a sense that like a lot of young men and young women went to far off places to do horrifically difficult things in the 1940s and before that I think we ought to be deeply appreciative for.
Gunny, but just before we move on, in this world of military service, and if your father had done it and said, whatever you do, man, don't join, what were you going to do when you were a kid? What did you think you'd be?
I wanted to be an advisor to the president. I thought politics was this like noble, like highest calling. And I did not want to be the candidate, if you will. Mm-hmm. But my fantasy was to be the person who whispered in the candidate's ear about how to better communicate with people. And you can see how that may have morphed into my current life. But it's mostly morphed into me yelling at the television every time I watch or hear a speech and saying, that is not what you should have said. What you should have said is this. And I will send long multi-paragraph text messages to my friends, those who work in politics and those who don't, about what should have been said. I can't turn it off.
So you wanted to advise the president. What did that lead to in terms of study and what did you really sort of do post school? What did you study? What was your first job?
Yeah, I went to college to study politics. At that point, I was still plugged in, and my hero at the time was a gentleman who was an advisor to Bill Clinton, President Bill Clinton, whose name was George Stephanopoulos. And to me, the coolest thing in the world about George Stephanopoulos was that he wore jeans in the White House. And I thought to myself, now there is a role model, someone who's like smart enough that they'll let him be casual. And I think that archetype of deeply informed, able to advise, like pays attention to communication, but can't be caught up in the trappings of wearing a suit. That was a deeply appealing archetype that I think probably even follows through to nonfiction in some way today.
Just before you move on, Gunny, just a quick, Adam, if you got to meet our Prime Minister, Albo, at Parliament House, would you wear jeans?
I would. And there's a
I've never seen you wear anything else. That's why I asked.
There's a photo of Albo, who's our Prime Minister at the moment, wearing a Radio Birdman T-shirt, which went nuts. Which is a pretty famous band back in the day in Australia. But somebody once said to me, if you're wearing a suit, it means you haven't ever gotten control of your career. And I like that kind of concept. A suit is a sign that things haven't quite worked out for you. Like, who would choose to wear a suit?
I think for some people it's a uniform.
Yeah, exactly.
I think for some people it's a uniform, right? And there's comfort in that. There's safety in that. But our uniform is a black T-shirt, a pair of jeans, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting how Gunny saw it. It's interesting that Gunny saw it in a way, which was there is a confidence and there is a to be the guy wearing the jeans where everyone else is wearing suits, right? You saw real confidence, swagger in that, right?
Yes, and I'll tell you, I had an experience where I spent 2 summers in Ghana in West Africa because my best friend was from there, my best friend in college, and I was there, and he had set up a meeting for me with a guy who was the top lawyer in the country, and I was so nervous going into this meeting for some reason, and I was it was about business stuff for my friend's father's business. And I just couldn't figure out what to wear. And I don't know if you've ever had that moment where you're dressing to go somewhere you feel is important and nothing that you put on feels quite right. And I was just changing in and out of stuff. And my friend Kofi just...
I hope you didn't decide to go dressed as a pirate or something silly.
I went dressed as a pirate. You have totally preempted the end of this story.
Sorry.
But we ended up bonding because of the bird on my shoulder turned out to be... No, and Kofi just said to me, he said, "Hey, there's power in wearing a T-shirt into this meeting." And I thought, that had never occurred to me at this time.
Who said that? Your friend or the lawyer?
Yeah, my friend. My friend,
your friend.
just said, "Hey, just wear a T-shirt. That's more powerful than anything else you're putting on." And I don't know, that story is kind of emblematic of this podcast in some ways.
It is.
But
the
it
power
really
of the
is
black
true.
T-shirt, man. 100%.
It
And so
really
you
is
did,
true.
and you did wear a T-shirt to meet the
I wore
lawyer
a T-shirt to the meeting. The meeting went well.
Yeah.
And I never looked back.
Wow.
I reckon what you do at Nonfiction is counter corporation. So anything you can signal to the corporation you're about to advise that you're not like them is very important, right? I think the viewers guessed by now, because we certainly haven't done a great job of doing it, of introducing you and your business as ethnographic researchers. You may have other language, but it's approximately that, correct?
What you're pointing out is not just right. It's like fundamental to our entire belief about why we do this at all. And that belief is that most research barely scratches the surface of real people's lives and feelings. And a huge reason behind that is because there is an invisible hand. The way Adam Smith talked about an invisible hand in a capital market, there is an invisible hand that pulls research into being average and useless. And that invisible hand has something to do with its taking place in conference rooms and in documents that will be reviewed by some SVP named Sharon or William or whatever. Like, it's just sucked into this world of the way things are normally done. And our entire promise to brands is that we will engage with that at a level of absolutely 0%, and that we will do everything in the world of the people rather than the world of these companies who are doing business. And then we will pull back things that you can use.
I couldn't agree more, Gunny. I mean, Adam, you've done heaps of consumer research in your career, but every time you put people in that focus group room behind the two-way mirror, they always watch more ABC and eat less McDonald's than they really do, right? People project and all sorts of,
But totally, and I reckon that's an easy solve because you just go where they are. How you presented that though, Gunny, is fascinating because all the shit and all the turgid crap and happens once you've got the insight and you're trying to talk to a corporation about that, and then it just turns to shit. What tools do you employ once you have the narrative or have what you want to communicate to make sure that lands?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think that our reputation is for only a piece of what we do. So I think nonfiction gets talked about most as someone from a very hot agency recently at a party said to someone that works at nonfiction that, like, aren't you guys the people who just do heroin with people and stuff? And it's like,
now there's a career.
I'm not saying that hasn't happened at some point on some project, but I think we get known because of the places that we go, right? We've been unchaperoned in a prison. We've been in hospitals while people are getting health news. Spent time rollerblading with rappers in Atlanta. We've crashed parties. We've thrown parties. We've built software programs. And so like our whole mission is to go absolutely anywhere that it takes in order to understand the audience that we're studying. But the truth is that these conversations get caught up in techniques a lot, right? And it happened when we started nonfiction, and it happens when somebody doesn't know nonfiction and invites us into a meeting. They're like, oh, is it, do you guys do surveys? Or do you do like focus groups or ethnographic research? And the honest thing is, like, it is not the techniques that are the problem with research. The problem is that the lack of techniques that other people are using just reveal a deeper lack of obsession at understanding people. And truth be told, the reason that I think our research tends to look and feel a little different and inspire things that are a little different is not really just because we like go to the places that other people don't go. I mean, we do that, but there's a zeal that is in not just our hearts, but in the hearts of many people who work in our industry, strategists, creatives, researchers. They get into this work because they want to understand people and make things that resonate, that are relevant. You get caught up in these normal research techniques where you're like, well, I suppose I'm supposed to use a Likert scale for this survey question. But what's missing, even among the people who want to do it so badly, is a space in which you can just go in and every project that we do, every research study that we do for a company, for an agency, it's based around a burning question. And essentially, that question gets handed to our lead researcher and the team supporting them. And they're told, you have 8 weeks, you have 6 weeks, you have 12 weeks, whatever it might be. Go do it, get it done. And the expectation is that they will be watching documentaries from the 1930s. They will be going undercover somewhere. They will be doing deep one-on-one interviews. They will be doing whatever it takes to actually bring back those answers. And so honestly, like, the technique thing is important, and ethnography is important, and all these things are important. But what's really, what was your word, decrepit about research is that it's lacking, it's caught in a corporate sense that I'm supposed to produce a research document, and it's lacking that obsessive passion for swimming in the bloodstream of the people that you're studying.
Adam?
Yeah?
Is this an ad?
This is an ad for Mutinex. Mutinex are a marketing mix modeling company.
Why do I need one of those?
Well, then you can model the return on every single marketing decision you do.
So you wouldn't do an ad like this?
You would never have to do an ad like this ever again.
Mutenex Growth OS, your best decisions start here. For more information or to request a demo, visit mutenex.co. That's mutenex.co. Swimming in the bloodstream. Gunny, the burning question. How do you get to the burning question? Do you work with the client or whoever you're working for? Do you to uncover that, or do they come to you with that? And do you mind sharing an example of a burning question so we get a sense of what they feel like?
We never try to sell anybody research. We don't try to inspire a company to do research when they don't already think that they need it, which is terrible for our business, but good for the projects that we end up working on. So there's always some desire within the company. It's usually one of a few things. The company feels out of touch with a particular audience. Maybe it's young, maybe it's old, maybe it's some new type of user. One, brand feels out of touch with the audience. Two, brand feels like they understand the audience rationally, but there's some deeper emotional level that's missing. Three, they just feel like they need a creative refresh. Or four, and is maybe the most interesting, is the brand is hungry to innovate something, that they just know that there's an innovation that is out there that they don't know enough about the need in order to be able to see the innovation. And so we usually get called in one of those situations. And then the question that we shape, it's got a lot of characteristics we've learned over the years, basically by bucking up some of the early ones in the business. And then we got smarter and smarter about what the question ought to be. But it is always a question. I think we stole that from Hegarty. Somebody wrote something about a brief should always have a question mark at the end. And I liked that. It's always written in everyday language. There's no jargon. There are no assumptions laden in there. And it's really clear what we need to uncover. And so usually the test that we apply to it is that, number one, we all agree that we don't already know the answer to this question. It forces everyone to admit that this is something we don't know. And then the second part is that if we knew the answer to this question, that it would change the business in some way. It would change our brand. It would change a campaign. It would change the products that we're innovating. And once you have that, now you've got something that, we were joking at the beginning of this podcast about do you even need research? I would say a lot of research you don't need, right? Just look at it and look at it when it's done. And then ask yourself, did I really need to do this? Did I need to spend this money? Did I need to spend this time? And most times the answer is no. But when you start with the burning question, you are guaranteeing yourself that if the researcher does their job, they're coming back with something that you, A, didn't know, and B, can do something with.
Put a microscope on that a little bit. What's the process for acknowledging that you don't already know that? So you would have to get the person commissioning the research, their internal stakeholders, your research team. There's quite a few people who would have to acknowledge they don't know the answer, right? Is that a conversation, or is that a meeting? Is that a process? And the same for the other question. How do you decide on the positive answers to those two questions?
It's usually about, I would say, a week on average of conversations. It's maybe 2 calls, a couple of emails. But we're self-motivated in why we do it. We're a small firm, and we live and die by a reputation for being different and producing stuff that doesn't look and sound and work like other research. And so we can't afford to let that slide out of our own self-interest, because if we start taking on those projects, there's nothing you can do. There's no amount of brilliance that you can be, that when a research project is framed as something that just isn't specific enough, or if it's chasing after something that the brand already knows, you've lost before you've started. You'll get paid. You'll brag about it on some website afterwards. You'll create a case study submission for some award show or something, but you will know that you did nothing of value. And so that's what we're trying to avoid.
So Gunny, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Just I want you to still answer Adam's question, but I just get the sense from that you could be much bigger than you are, and you probably say no to quite a lot of projects. Is that true? I just got the sense there in the way you answered that you might go to that week of exploratory, and do you then say, actually, this isn't a job for us, or do you turn stuff away if it doesn't feel like the right type of research?
For sure. We have to. I would not advise anyone to do this as like a way to run a business. It has its costs. It has real costs.
I reckon what you're saying is the absolute fundamental issue of market research. And too often I've seen somebody state the bleeding obvious that the company everybody already knows. And so therefore they have to layer on loads and loads of enthusiasm to make it sound like they're saying something new. Right. And the whole thing just feels like an embarrassing ritual.
Well, it's ass covering most of it, right?
Yeah, that's right. And then I think the research industry goes, oh my God, you put us in this position again where everyone knows this is ridiculous, but we all have to play along with it. So I really, really like those two questions you ask, because do we already know this? And if we do know it, will it unlock growth or help create an opportunity? I don't think those two questions are
asked enough.
I think that's wonderful. I like it.
So sorry, I did interrupt. Gunny, back to what you're saying. So the process of getting to that question, you're starting to unpack that a little bit. And sorry, I interrupted you. So how do you make it work? How do you sort of go through the process and come up with that burning question?
I mean, it is deeply collaborative at the beginning. We sometimes get poked fun at because we enforce dark periods in the middle of research projects where the researcher, they're just supposed to be immersed in the world of people, and they are not going to reply to emails or share early insights or any of that stuff that ends up ruining research. But
how long's a dark period?
So let's say it's an 8 to 12 week project, which is about average for us. The researcher is responsible for sending a Friday email, which for some reason has become like the most popular thing in the project. Like people love getting these Friday emails. And in the Friday email, they'll say, oh, here's everything we did this week. Here's what we've got going on next week. We're slightly ahead. We're slightly behind, whatever, like pacing. And here are a couple interesting nuggets that we heard. But the basic understanding with our clients is that we don't really communicate that much through the rest of the week. And we don't really share findings until a third or half of the way through the project. And the reason we do that is if somebody asks you 2 weeks into a research project, hey, I know you're still working. But could you just share a few things that you've heard? You will crystallize those findings prematurely, and then it is almost impossible to get them out of your head. You can't, it's like you've planted a tree that could never be dug up again. And so we just enforce that period. So you still get weekly emails. You know that, we have not absconded to some country with no extradition agreement. And you can see the progress that's going on. But there are big dumps of findings, of themes, maybe a third or halfway in. And it's really important because we also need that collaboration in the middle of the project again, because it's easy as a researcher to lack the context of what that company needs. And every time we come, the company will say, hey, don't bother digging into that anymore. Kevin tried that 3 years ago, got fired for it. We're not going to do that no matter what you do. And we say, great, thanks for helping us not waste our time on that. And, so that helps us focus in. But that stuff's crucial. It's just amazing to me that other research endeavors, they're like inseparable from the client that they're doing the research for. And say, how are you supposed to live in the world of the people and live in the world of those hallways? It's a horrific mistake.
Yep.
The popular part of communications now is kind of not dressed up. It's kind of like brand transformation, or understanding the entire customer journey and CX of people. And that becomes quite detailed, journey mapping and kind of understanding the customer at every single part of their interaction with the brand and so on. Do you do that kind of research, or is that just a whole other bucket of stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. No one has ever asked this before. We don't. And I'll tell you why. This is also probably controversial. It's really standard to do a journey map or there are a number of CX outputs that come from those things. And I would actually say that many of them are valuable to do in general. It's not like you shouldn't understand every touch point. You should, because every one of those touch points is an opportunity to reinforce the brand. Sometimes it's there's a real way to make somebody's day in those touch points. And when you don't map them all, it's easy to miss them by only focusing on the major ones. So there you go. There's my panegyric to the journey map.
Yeah.
However, there's something about the structure of that document that we have found is a prison. We don't use any structure to any document because you will chase the structure of that document. Like, how often have you seen even a creative brief, which is a similar structure of a document that more people are familiar with? Someone in the agency is like, oh, let me go research creative briefs. And then they find some creative brief from like 1968 and it's from BNP. And maybe we should include this in our brief, and then our briefs will be better. And then you revise the brief structure, and then people just hew mediocre work to a new brief structure. And you don't need a brief structure, you need an idea. And if you hew to the structure, you will consistently deliver things that just look like that structure and technically check the boxes. Not to say checklists aren't important for briefs, for anything else, but there's a higher bar that we could all look for. And for us in research, that higher bar is bring me back something that I do not know about my audience, about their lives, their feelings, their fears, their cultural associations, whatever it might be. Bring me back something that I don't know and that I can use, that can have an impact on the business. And so we found that a couple times we accepted that in an SOW essentially, and we regretted it within probably 10 days because we could already feel the corruption on the research process. And so, yeah, those documents are valuable, but we don't use them because we're chasing after something else. And that will be a siren call away from the thing that we ought to be hunting.
So what do your outputs look like then, Gunny? So how do you tend to present your findings? You know, you don't have a template. You don't have it sounds like you don't have a very sort of structured way of doing it. What does it look like? What does it look like when you come back after your research projects? How do you present that back to your client?
And Gunny, the only way you can live up to how you're presenting yourself so far is if you say something like interpretive dance or something like that.
Ben Zeidler, the other co-founder of Nonfiction, has been trying to get us to use an oral history as a deliverable at some point. I think that's a great idea. We have not yet found the right situation for that.
Just on that point, Gunny, and sorry to be so self-referential, but one of the best pitches we've ever done at Tinkerbell was when we just sent a sound file for our whole pitch. And there was a reason why we did it, but we just said to the client, go to a park at your own time, go listen to this, here's our pitch. And it was just a sound file. And I'm
you won it?
We won it. And there's still a client today, but can't believe I'm sharing this because it's such a cool trick in quotes to do. It was really, really powerful.
Have you done it since?
I haven't done it since, but we keep on waiting for the right opportunity. There's a real reason to do it for that thing. So that oral history example I can relate to. Just getting people to listen without distraction to your insights, I think would be very powerful.
But until then, Gunny, how do you do it?
No, I love that. I can give you a couple examples, but I'll preface them by saying that I almost don't care in a way. I don't mean that to be combative, because I do think that the format is can be extremely important. However, sometimes a powerful feeling or finding can come through in almost anything, even if it's like totally informal. But I'll give you a couple examples. We did some work around pregnancy a couple of years ago for an organization called Twill. The CMO at the time was Gareth Kay, who is a strategist that I grew up idolizing. I never told him this, but I had a quote of his on my desktop for about a year that I was like, yeah, man, like someday I'll meet Gareth Kay. I might be able to shake his hand.
I too had held him in high reverence. I've never met him. But
I know Gareth. We should get him on we should get him on the show. Yeah.
He's such a good person that it will confuse you how he can be so smart. Things that are not normally found in the same individual coexist within Gareth Kay. He's an incredible guy.
What did Twill do, Gunny? What's their business?
Twill is an app around mental health, and they were formerly known as Happify, and they operate in several areas of mental health. They were going to be launching something around pregnancy and mental health and pregnancy. And we were excited and blessed to get a call from Gareth to dive into the real story of pregnancy. There's no shortage of insights about pregnancy, and there are already a lot of things that you think about people who are pregnant. You've got the like happy Instagram glow, this is the happiest moment of my life sort of thing. You've got the baby blues. You can like see the stock photos of these things, like the baby blues. You've got the crazy hormonal woman with the hair all over the place. That's another cliche. In the research on pregnancy, which was led by Lindsay Waking, who is now the chief strategy officer at Nonfiction, and she has built a lot of the amazingness of what we do. But in her work, she really uncovered, in her conversations with women, a level of difficulty and dark feelings that were felt by not most pregnant women, but many pregnant women, but were hardly ever discussed even among friends. The specific things that I'm talking about are a large number of people who are pregnant will experience an extreme paranoia about their partner cheating on them. They will have dreams of, sorry to say this, there's no soft way to say this, but they will have dreams of murdering their unborn child. And these are things that are nerve-wracking when you're going through them, especially when you know that half of the human population for hundreds of thousands of years has gone through this experience and no one has ever talked to you about it. So there was a conversation that Lindsay had with a woman who, this is a bit of a dark story, but a conversation that she had with a woman who had been in a car accident. She was T-boned and the car was spinning. And right before that happened, she was in the car with her boyfriend was driving, and they had been having an argument again. And as the car is spinning and spinning and spinning, she's thinking to herself, I hope that all three of us die in this car accident. Now today, she's a reasonably happy mother in a successful relationship. But that is not the only woman who has felt that in pregnancy. And Lindsay's hearing this story, and we often will record the one-on-one interviews and then scrub them of personal information and delete the recordings. It's a way for us to have a record of it while still being able to guarantee total anonymity to the people. We later featured this in a podcast, which is the point that I'm getting to. But that recording of her telling that story was so raw and immediate that we just got on the phone with Gareth and his teammates, and we just played that recording. We just played a snippet from that recording. It was 2 minutes. that recording lasted. And for about 3 minutes after it, no one spoke.
Wow.
That is one way to present insights. Now, later, there was a 200-page methodologically unassailable document that quantified this out and had the quotes and all that stuff. And we later, with Twill, turned a lot of that into a podcast so that people who are pregnant who are going through that now can hear it and can hear other people's stories, and helps to normalize those emotions. But I guess the point is, anything that you can do to drive the client, the agency, the listener, whoever it might be, directly into the raw experience of people is something that we are in favor of. We've created like interactive things in like, rented this mansion one time and created this whole like walkthrough experience around intimacy and the lack of intimacy that people secretly experience. We've taken clients with us to fairly unusual places so that they can experience things directly. But at the end of the day, we do a lot of video work, but at the end of the day, all we really care about is like, is this taking the client directly into the experience as much as possible? Or is it a fake corporate document that only approximates that, like the shadows on the wall in Plato?
Hey, Gunny, I really, really am enjoying this a lot. I'm enjoying listening to you talk because, I've got a research background and I'm a psychologist, and there's so much conversations around trying to get deep, penetrating insights, and in the world of psychology, all the big insights were done in the kind of 50s before ethics departments kind of ruled universities, and now everything is kind of derivative of these kind of big, basic insights. And
Phil Zimbardo ruined it for everyone.
Exactly, and I just don't know.
I've ever had a Phil Zimbardo joke.
But and we got it. Anyway, so I think there's something to be said for trying to get deep, penetrating insights at that level and going out there and understanding people and so on. But to spend as much time trying to align an organization around those insights is phenomenal and almost a business in and of itself. And where my mind goes is to theatre and experiential types of, just when you mentioned the house and getting people to go through that, the mansion, and go through that and have that experience about feeling what it's like to be lonely. And I just wonder if the world of research should be spending more time in that zone of creating theatrical experiences for their clients as much as they are trying to untap the story from the consumer.
Not even theatrical, real experiences, right? Because I think the thing I always say is, a desk is a dangerous place to do marketing from, right?
But
right?
It's not necessarily real experiences. A very good marketer once told me, when you get talking about B2B, we're obsessed with real people doing real things, and it gets really boring really quickly.
Did I say that?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, sorry, but just I think theatrical made it maybe sound a little bit
Contrived.
Exaggerated.
But it is exaggerated because you have to get through.
You tell us, Gunny, would you call them theatrical experiences that you try and, obviously you're trying to get the client out of their corporate world, right, to experience what it really feels like for real people, right? I mean, that's sort of the heart of what you're trying to do, or are you trying to shock them a bit? Are you trying to shock them into action?
I resist the word shock a little bit. Like, yeah. I think it's probably true. We are trying to shock them into understanding, but I resist the word shock a little bit just because.
What about theatrical? How do you feel about the word theatrical?
Overly sensitive about like sensationalism, because so much of what we do is just not stuff you normally come across at work. And so there's always a road you can walk down that is sensational for the sake of being sensational. And we always try to walk in the other direction of that road. But the core of what you're saying is, I think, absolutely right. And I don't know that we do as good of a job as we could do at that. I lose sleep over thinking about what happens to our insights after we hand them off. We are not a consultancy. We are not a, pick another name for a company. We only do one thing, and it's we go understand people and then either bring that back to you, client, or we take you into that world. It's like in the same way of being a creative. You think about those campaigns or those ideas that got away, that like you presented it and you just knocked the hell out of it, and then it didn't become what you wanted it to become.
This is why I became a client, Gunny. This is why I became a client, is to hand my ideas over to these marketers, and invariably they die. But I'm interested to come back to what you said. You hand your insights off to other people and you lose sleep over what they do with them.
Yeah.
What happens when you see it, though? How often do you see it in a creative project where you see, oh, hang on, that's that insight we come up with and that has led to... Do you see it much?
He sees it less than he'd like.
Yeah. I mean, I want it all the time. I'm greedy and wanting to see impact. And I think that's the kind of people that we hire, are the people who are trying to close that gap between institutions and the people that they serve for reasons that are even bigger than, I don't know, whatever we call this, like research. But yeah, it's great when you do see it. I mean, we worked on a project a couple years ago, with Disney. Disney has a division that essentially creates educational field trips for kids. So you bring kids to Disney World and take them behind the scenes at Space Mountain, turn on the lights, teach them about F equals ma cubed or whatever that formula is.
F equals ma. Force equals mass times acceleration.
Yes, Adam.
Impressive, Adam.
Following up from the Zimbardo joke.
Yeah.
A big year 12 physics equations. Woohoo!
And so, I mean, this is a division that is worth a lot of money to Disney. And they woke up one morning and realized that a lot of their customer base for that are older teachers who have been bringing the kids for this educational trip to Disney year after year after year. And if you look at the distribution of age and teaching at the time, you saw a bunch of 59-year-old teachers, you saw a bunch of 24-year-old teachers, and there was a U-shaped curve there. And Sean Brown at Disney very rightfully saw that they had hundreds of millions of dollars predicated upon the implicit assumption that the 24-year-old teachers are going to want the same things that the 59-year-old teachers wanted when the 59-year-old teachers retire in a couple of years. And so the burning question was something along the lines of, like, what do younger teachers really want from field trips? And how can Disney give them something that no one else could? I mean, we were interviewing teachers, we were interviewing principals, students, parents. We were driving in the back roads of Georgia and Florida to buy teachers lunch in their lunchrooms. If you ever want to just hear teachers go ham and express all of their feelings, the lunchroom is the place to go. They will just fucking unleash on everything. The administration, the kids. It's a little disconcerting. But we kept doing it. We just kept going into teacher lunchrooms and we would buy them lunch and talk to them about stuff. We would find the forms that they used to request field trips from a principal. We talked to principals about why they had declined field trips. We realized that some of the schools were using the field trips as marketing for the schools themselves. We looked at the history of field trips. We looked at the distribution. We did a nationwide survey. All of these things. And the thing that we found that surprised us the most was that the conventional wisdom on field trips is that it should relate to the curriculum, right? Mm-hmm. It should be a way to get out of the classroom and experience something hands-on that relates to the curriculum. You know, you try to get your principal to approve a field trip to like a water park, and it's a lot harder. It's an uphill climb. That's kind of the thinking that we had going in. But one of the things that we found was that surprised us, that we only found when we were hanging out with teachers in like school libraries and shit, was that a lot of them held a very emotional worry that their kids were missing out on understanding the the diversity of jobs that were available to them. Someone had talked to us about the people who shoot frozen chickens at airplanes to test their durability. That's a real job. And they were saying, like, there are all these jobs out there and the kids don't even know about them. They all just want to be teachers or firefighters or things that they've heard of. And we thought, like, fuck, that's not like the prevailing assumption right now. And we realized that what a lot of those teachers wanted but didn't necessarily have in other field trips, or at least not in an interesting way, was stuff about STEM and leadership and like the variety of jobs that you can have. And so we took that back to Disney, and there were a lot of changes that came out of that, but they ended up completely relaunching that offering. It's now called Disney Imagination Campus. And they just rethought it from the ground up. And now there are, I don't know the numbers, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, whatever it is, of kids that are going through that thing every year that are having their minds opened about like what leadership looks like. And they're learning it the Disney way, about what a STEM job could actually involve. And they're learning it the Disney way. And that's so exciting. You know, it's something that lived in the hearts and minds of young teachers that was not on the radar. We were in the right place at the right time. We put ourselves in the right place at the right time to find it. We brought it back to Disney, and now Disney's doing Disney stuff with it. And, you know, that's a dream to look at that. And there are, you know, none of those kids who go through that will ever know what nonfiction is or know the people who worked on that. But you get to look at that and you just smile to yourself.
So, Gunny, you go to lunchrooms to find out what teachers are thinking. We go to pubs to find out what punters are thinking. So we do a thing on this podcast. It's called the pub test. You will cringe at the very shallow level we go to find out what people think, right, Adam?
That's exactly right. So we walked down to the pub. We asked a few people who are there what they think. And what have we asked them today, Brent?
Well, we thought we'd actually, sometimes we have a piece of work that we'll put in front of people at the pub test. We've sort of put your life's work in front of them, Gunny. We've asked them about market research and how the average punter feels about it. And here's what they said. The pub test is brought to you by Deely, the insights platform where ideas go to grow.
Yeah, I think I try to be honest when answering research questions as much as I can be.
Would I be honest? I don't see a reason not to be.
Yeah, I'll try to be, for sure. Depends on the stakes, except, yes, I would try to be honest.
I think I am. I think some people definitely worry about giving honest answers in those settings, but I mean, that's what you're being paid to do, so why not?
I don't know if I would believe necessarily what people say in the research, but I think it depends on the group that you're working with.
Yes, with a degree of skepticism.
No. I would presume that there is maybe plus or minus 10% of truth.
No, because I think I'm honest generally, but I think people, are influenced by the environment that they're in, which is you're not going to get a straight answer out of them generally with market research.
Yes, research passes the pub test.
The concept of research? I'd hope so.
Holistically, yes. I think so.
No, the pub test is the pub test. You've got to be at the pub, and if you had a secret camera and could actually hear what people were saying, that would pass the pub test.
So market research may fail the pub test because it's not really getting the insights, whereas if you just had a camera on people, it would pass because you're bypassing the consumer's mouth in a way, is what I think they're saying. What are your thoughts, Gunny?
Yeah, the truth is that I think if you look at any technique in isolation, it's only going to give you a portion of an understanding of what's going on inside of people. So you have to take what people say in one-on-one interviews and combine that, collide it, I would even say, with what their partners say about that sort of thing. So for instance, if you ask me why I buy watches, I will give you one answer. My wife will give you another answer. Those are two very different perspectives on why I buy wristwatches. And the one that my wife will give you is significantly less flattering than the one that I will give you. And you need both of those perspectives. Plus, talk to people who are wristwatch salespeople. They have a perspective on why people buy wristwatches. You will get different answers in a quantitative survey than you will in one-on-one conversations. And when you go into people's homes and you see where they keep their wristwatches, I don't know why I'm so deep on this wristwatch analogy. Wristwatch brands out there, holler at your boy. I do love wristwatch. And my favorite wristwatch is actually an Australian brand.
What is it? What's your favorite
It's
wristwatch?
like Motocore. It's like it's this Australian micro brand. They take they take high quality movements and how they're sort of like racing chronographs that are amazing, modeled after old
Two
Jaguar.
Australians are sitting here and we don't know that brand.
Don't know it, but I was in a cafe the other day and my son said to me, "Hey, Dad," and he's 11, "you see that guy over there? His watch is worth $600,000.
And your son knew that.
And I went over to him and I said, "Mate, my son reckons your watch is worth $600,000. I did $600,000." And he looks at me and goes, "Your son knows watches."
And how does your son know? How does your son know that?
Did your son
I don't
sell
know.
it to him?
No. It's called a Richard Mill, Kenneth Mill, Richard. I don't know, but it's quite a unique design. But it's pretty garish as well. So it kind of
Does a famous footballer? That's how my kids would only know if like Ronaldo owned that watch. That's how my kids would know.
I'll tell you, that's not how he knows. He's not into that. But anyway,
Yeah.
But yeah, I like what you so lots of multiple perspectives. Bring it all together. The insight, you don't know where the truth's going to come from, but it will be playing around with all those sources.
And to get those multiple views. I mean, one thing that's really stuck with me through this chat, Gunny, is time. That's not
a bad pun.
That's a bad pun on wristwatches. Yes, no, because I think we're all working in a very condensed time frame, right? Like as marketers, as agencies, and it just seems like the time keeps shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. We get less time to write a brief. We get less time to come up with the idea. Yeah, you're sort of saying we need 12 weeks, 8 weeks. We need time to go deep. We need time to really. So that's interesting, right? In a world that I think, in a business world that's getting faster and faster, you're actually saying, hang on, no, we need time. We need to talk to, we need multiple angles. We need, time to let the researcher just go and immerse themselves in the world and not be emailed and not be responding. So I don't know. There's a
Can I reframe?
tension there, maybe.
Can I reframe what you're saying for Gunny?
You gonna ask a better question?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't think Gunny needs time. I think he needs space.
Right.
And
okay.
I think it's slightly different. So he just needs this. Oh, you're looking at me like I'm being a dickhead.
No, that's great. Semantics. Space, Gunny. You need space to be able to go deep and uncover these, answer these burning questions. Yes, like you can't do it in a week, 2 weeks, right?
Correct. Time and space are important, and I find it a shame that the ability of strategy departments at agencies to do this deep level of research that is often expected to produce the insights that are being asked of an agency has been completely eviscerated by the modern way of working. And so it seems that every year clients are looking for more and more breakthrough, disruptive insights, and you get 72 hours to turn around a brief. It's bonkers. That is a problem. And it's one of the reasons why we stepped out of agency world to do the work. But agencies deserve more time and more space the same way we do.
You know why I like Ideally, Adam?
Why, Brent?
It's fast. You get insights overnight. And I think the main thing is it's not trying to test whether an idea should live or die, but it's trying to give you real insights that you can build on and make the creative better.
That sounded like an ad.
Because it was.
Do you know why I like Ideally?
Why?
Because they sponsor the black T-shirts.
They do.
If you want to do a pub test on your own, don't. Go to Ideally instead.
That's right. Visit goideally.com. That's goideally.com and find out how they can help. Of course, if you do need insights in 72 hours, ideally.
Yeah, Ideally, faster, cheaper, quicker.
Yeah, our good friends at Ideally who sponsor the podcast. The other thing I love, Gunny, is the way you talk about your work. I don't think I've ever met anyone in research who has the same kind of pride in their work as like a creative person. I think that's how you talk about it, right?
It's so funny because I was thinking we're just about up on time, so I was going to close it. I might just use that to close the interview at the same thing. I was going to say, Gunny, we haven't even used the word creative once in this whole time, but this was potentially one of the most creatively fertile conversations we've had, and it felt really, really creatively inspiring. And so I'm not quite sure what the dynamic going on there was, but I loved it. So thank you very much for sharing your insights today.
I'd love you to respond to that question around the pride in your work and the pride in what you do. I feel is like the way a creative person talks about their work, and I've never felt that personally before from someone in your area. So tell us about that.
I think you just reach a point in your life where you start thinking about what's going to be on your tombstone, and not everything you touch is going to end up on your tombstone, but you want to put yourself in a place where you can do tombstone kind of work. And that's something that Ben and I tried to build nonfiction to do. And it comes at a cost. Several costs. It really does. This is not like some glorification of the path we've chosen. But it is a decision, and you say no to things and you say yes to other things, and you try to end up in a place where the stuff that you make and the stuff that you put into the world, either through brands or the stuff that we publish independently, leaves a trace of a certain taste. And so I thank you for saying that.
Well, and how do you protect that? Do you do a lot of internal reviewing of your work? How do you keep the standard high, or do you just hire people who are naturally driven,
good lawyers that protect the insights? No.
Do you have to sort of protect the quality of the work like a creative director does in an agency?
Yeah, taste is a big part of it. I think you have to hire people who would rather do that kind of work than receive other types of dopamine hits. That's the first thing. And then you have to continually be willing to throw out anything that you do in the company if it doesn't feel like it's actually getting there. I think that's a big piece of it too. And Lindsay says that some things are slopes and some things are cliffs. And when it comes to this sort of thing, it's a cliff. If you take one step in the wrong direction, you cannot get back up. You will just slide the fuck down that mountain. If you're going to set out to do what we're trying to do, you just have to stay away from that cliff because it's not a slope that you can run back up.
Well, Gunny, we've hardly mentioned the words creativity or creative today in this conversation, but it's in some ways it's been the most creatively fertile kind of conversation I think we've had. I've found it really inspiring, your dedication to the pursuit of getting organisations to hear the insight. And I think we haven't touched on the name of your business, which is Nonfiction, which I absolutely love, because so often corporations are just full of fictitious stories they tell themselves. So to come in there and kind of beat them over the head with some nonfiction is beautiful. It's fantastic. So
you can't handle the nonfiction.
So thank you very much, Gunny, for and a little military theme there.
So full circle. Marines too. Hey, before you go, Gunny, you talked before about tombstone work. So you've obviously thought a little bit about pithy things you might put on a stone.
Stop trying to cram these segues in.
I thought that was quite a good segue. What about if you thought about your personal creative philosophy or mantra that you could put on a black T-shirt? What would it be, Gunny?
It would be something overly sentimental, probably, but earnest, which would be like, feel what they feel until you can barely feel yourself anymore. I'll probably need 2 lines on the T-shirt. But yeah,
Feel what they feel
until you can
barely
feel yourself anymore.
Yeah.
that's
interesting.
yeah.
Unless they're feeling you.
That's how you know you've gone far enough in research. When you start to lose
yourself,
you
lose
are.
your sense of self, and you're into them. That's great. Love it.
Well, man, that's cool. Gunny, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming on, man. Been great talking to you.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for having a podcast that is fighting the fight for creativity. I've listened to a lot of the episodes, and you guys are doing a great job.
God bless. Good on you, man.
Thanks, man.
Hey, wasn't he great? Wasn't Gunny? He restored my faith in research by pure dedication to the craft. And that was interesting. I wasn't expecting that.
No, and I think that is the common theme, right? Like dedication, obsession with the craft. That's what all the great creatives we've had on have.
Yeah.
He's got more in common with the great creative leaders we've had on this pod than you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
totally.
Than you'd expect.
He felt a little bit like Nick Worthington talking about film stock. I felt the same way with Gunny talking about how to get a good insight.
Yeah.
And just don't fuck with me. I need my moment here. I need my space. I need my time, and I'll come back to you. But don't fuck with me.
When have you ever had that much time? If you think about your business in the last few years, right? When have you ever had the luxury of 12 weeks to really understand?
So we didn't grill
customers?
him enough, right? Is it worth it? Is it worth spending 12 weeks for nonfiction to go away, create an insight, come back and say, there you go? And Gunny will say it is because it's his business model. But I reckon there is something to be said for what we spoke about is not only getting the insight, but ensuring that it lives. And if it doesn't live, or if the organisation just swallows it, then it's a waste of time and money.
Yeah, and I'd say from my personal experience on that, I think a lot of it has to do with the story you tell around that insight. So rather than it being buried in some PowerPoint document, if you can find a way to tell an insight in a powerful way, I think it can live inside organisations. As an example, we did some sort of deep ethnographic stuff around the Telstra brand, and the most powerful thing that we got out of that were drawings that people drew of how the Telstra brand made them feel. Those drawings are absolutely living on in our organisation way more powerfully than any PowerPoint.
And so maybe the
presentation
question the researcher needs to ask themselves is not how do I communicate this, but how do I communicate to the organisation so the organisation can take this insight and communicate within itself?
I don't think the researcher needs to ask that. I think the marketer needs to ask that. And I think where marketers don't do enough. Like if you think about the great skill set that a marketer has, right? Storytelling, the ability to simplify, the ability to be creative. Like we've got to apply that not just to the communication outputs, but in terms of how we communicate internally. And that's how I believe you can get strategies to stick and to be really inspiring and to get people to kind of act behind them, right? You got to think about, I always say we got to do a better job marketing, right?
Just with those stories those pictures of people talking about Telstra, I assume they were, would you show those to the CEO or would you feel like a goose?
No, I would, and I did.
Right. Okay. Great. To communicate something that could have only been communicated with those pictures.
Well, because I think you feel something when you see them.
Yeah.
And I think in the end, that's what brands are, right? Like they make people feel things. So, and it's and Gunny was saying something similar. I think ultimately with insights and with strategies, we ultimately want to make people feel something, and ultimately they're presented usually in a way where you don't feel anything. It's all head, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to a bit of heart and how we tell these insights.
That was a good episode.
I think so.
Good on you.
See ya.